as a backward country, and it's no good as the U.S. in all fields, no matter in terms of technology, education, economy, or the military. So then, and theoretically speaking, a country is backward in all sectors, and they have no chance to narrow the strength gap and comprehensively with the status power. And then we see that, and in the last 30 years, China gradually narrowed the strength gap, reduced the strength disparity with the U.S. So we try to explain why, and China can make it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And in terms of where the Sino-U.S. relationship is heading, I mean, we of course saw some news yesterday about a very significant trade move, the tariffs that have been put on steel and aluminum. Do you think that China and the U.S. is heading for a trade war and eventually maybe even for a new Cold War?
I'm a security guy, so for me, I will define the term of war very rigorously. War means the military violence between two actors, and they use military strategy to kill each other. So they use the term trade war. Actually, from my understanding, this a kind of analogy. It's not a real thing. And so just now we heard a panelist argue that if there's a trade war, it possibly escalating into the real war. And I don't think there's this kind of relations. And the economic relationship, no matter it's tension or cooperation, and not necessarily have a very strong impact on the security relations. For instance, and the U.S. is the largest trade partner of China, but you can see we have not have that kind of a consistent security relationship since the end of the Cold War. And Japan once was our largest trade partner, and also our relationship is not that good. And the other case is that our economic relationship with Russia is very minimum, but then the strategic relationship is quite stable. So from my understanding, people worry about the trade conflicts between China and the U.S. may escalate into the military war. I think that's not very realistic. And actually, I do not support the idea, although let's the trade war come in, we can easily win. I don't think either side can win the trade competition easily, because both sides are too big. And so there's two economic giants, and if they have conflicts, I don't think either side can win it easily. And what we looking for? We're looking for them how to manage the conflicts.
So, well, one of the key indicators that you have stressed throughout your writings and your theory and so on is in terms of evaluating global power shifts, and this is really what we're talking about, is political leadership. And we have come to a point in time where there have been some tectonic shifts in the political leadership between the two great powers, and I would say the second one is China. So in 2013, you argued that Xi Jinping would abandon the foreign policy dogma of keeping a low profile. This is the one that Deng Xiaoping very much initiated in the early 80s, and that, as we saw later on, he would strive for achievement. How is China's foreign policy shifting to a more daring engagement in the world, and also in a world where we have you have U.S. President Trump, who has very different, let's say, profile from the previous presidents? Does that present an opportunity for this vision that President Xi has for China?
Mm-hmm. Well, the keeping low profile strategy initiated by Deng Xiaoping, and generally speaking, in 1991. And then this foreign principle implemented for about 30 years. And then by 2013, and our leader delivered a speech about the diplomacy on the surrounding countries. And during this speech, and we discussed the term summarized as striving for achievements. So that means that China's foreign policy becomes more active and initiative, and rather than the passive. And for keeping low profile means that, okay, if you have troubles and you try to avoid it and don't fight back, and so if you make a conciliation and then the issue will minimize and then it will disappear. This strategy works and very effectively in early 1990s when China is really weak. And when China make a conciliation, especially to the US, and the US says, okay, anyhow, China is already gave up. But now the situation changed. You see, after the Trump's visit to China, and we treat him especially in the Forbidden City, and then just 2 months later, and the US issued all of these documents and calling China as identify China formally, publicly as a rival, strategic rival. So China is already become economically, the size is so big, it's impossible for China to continue that strategy, keeping low profile. And so I forget who, one of the panelists that China has no intention to challenge the US. This is absolute right, but this is only from the perspective of subject perspective. That means they have no motivation to challenge. But the growth of China's economy and the comprehensive strength objectively challenge the US. For instance, and the US wants to have 12 aircraft carrier, China has none. But now China has one, and then in 5 years, and possibly China have 3. So the maritime power, the structure of the maritime power will change. So this is a kind of an optical challenge. That's why, from my understanding, the keeping low profile can no longer and have that kind of function like it did in early 1990s.
And continuing on this issue of expanding Chinese engagement with the world, what do you think are the most essential global commitments that China should undertake given the current global political uncertainty in terms of increasing its influence in the world, and also vis-a-vis the rise of whether you call it demagogy, populism in the rest of the world? And also later on, I will link it to that with the New Silk Road and all that. Yeah.
Okay. I think there's some misunderstanding about China's foreign policy, and partially because of this kind of traditional thinking, and partially because of our propaganda. And our propaganda is also a part of the reason make the rest of the world misunderstand China's foreign policy. And first, we have to say, China, in terms of the strengths, China is the only global power in terms of economy, not in politics, not in the military. So China do not have that kind of a military capability to project the troops all over the world. And China do not have that political influence and all over the world. For instance, look at this forum. At this forum, there's no any Chinese political influence. China is invisible. So from my understanding, China is a kind of the influence of China was exaggerated, and then the international community and have increased their expectation for China's responsibility. So just now someone said that, and U.S. encouraged China, cooperated with China to press the North Korea to give up their nuclear weapons. Then what's the result? And this, from the last year, from April of last year until now, almost a year, China and U.S. worked together, cooperated with each other, and then they failed to force North Korea to give up nuclear weapons. So China's capability is still very limited. And I don't think China has that capability to provide a global leadership. It's beyond China's capability.
All right. right. So global power in economy only, you said that. So let's take the economy. So would you say that the New Silk Road and also, the Belt and Road Initiative as it's called now, and the newly established entity of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and other initiatives like that are adequate in this drive of China to fill the gap that is being left by an isolationist American Trump policy?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, the BRI was viewed as the Americans' Marshall Plan, and in early 1950s. Actually, Chinese government have repeatedly and to explain this is not a Marshall Plan, and this is economic concern. There's no political motivation behind it, and so in our term we call it the upgrade international economic cooperation. So in 1980s, when we opened the door to the world, we try to get attract foreign capital and foreign talents, foreign technology, and foreign goods to China. And now China's economy developed to today, and then we need to looking outside. That means our capital, our engineers, our technology need to looking for the market. So this pressure is very, very heavy. And in China, and some people, okay, even talking about the private entrepreneurs, they have the capital, but they cannot find a suitable project. And not every project is a profit. So they find that, hey, if you invest the same amount of money in foreign countries, you can make more money than you invest money in China. And so, and also the private prices also have to compete with the state-owned business. So that's why they are looking for any opportunity all over the world for their investment. So from my understanding, this BRI mainly driven by the economic concern rather than by military or the political concern.
You will not be surprised if I move on to Europe now.
Sure.
So now, in the past, at least as far as I know, you have been a bit pessimistic about the future of the European Union, stressing that Germany has given too much attention to the wallet, lacking political vision. Do you think that the political agenda of the French president, Macron, the new French president, and the upgraded EU security coordination that has been agreed recently will succeed in boosting the project of European integration? Or can you give us anything more optimistic than your past writings have been on Europe?
Well, this morning I attended a panel in the other room talking about the identity and the diversity of the EU. And the people debate how to strengthen the European identity and avoid the being undermined by the diversity. Actually, through that discussion, I found that they didn't talking about the leadership. And any kind of regional cooperation or regional integration requires a leadership. Why the EU can becomes a model for the rest of the world? It's because France and Germany can provide a model for the Europeans' integration, right? Both economy and the political integration. Why in East Asia and the regional cooperation and very, very backward, there's nothing regional economic cooperation or the economic cooperative infrastructure in East Asia. There's nothing. And all the trade are bilateral instead of multilateral. The reason is that no country can provide a leadership for regionalization in East Asia. Neither China, Japan, nor US. And each of the three want to provide the leadership by themselves. Actually, that's impossible. So here, my personal theory is a moral realism, heavily emphasizes the role of the leadership. And if you don't have a suitable leadership for this region, and you can never have the regional cooperation or integration moving forward. Now come to the EU. And now EU come to, after the crisis of 2008, and the EU need a strong leadership. What do you mean leadership? Leadership do not only means you have more power, and also you have to prepare to pay price. That's a big sacrifice for being leader. So by now, I don't think any European countries, at least according to what I heard in that in that panel, no country prepares that, okay, I'm going to prepare to pay the price for being a leader. And if no one wants to pay the price, and you don't have that kind of leadership, and I doubt you can put forward the regional integration in Europe.
Okay, that's clear. One last question for me, and then maybe we'll have time for one question from the audience. Recently, you've written about a potential combination between let's call it the ideology of the West, and that's liberalism, whether it's political or economic liberalism, and ancient Chinese values.
Yes.
And this is something that, at least to me, sounded extremely strange, different, new. Could you describe a little bit your thinking that is behind that?
Okay. Not only at this forum, at the Munich Security Conference, also a lot of Europeans and Americans are talking about the danger of the liberalist order. They concern the liberalist order being challenged, and this order can no longer be maintained as solid as before. Actually, I agree with this judgment, but then the challenge do not come from China. The challenge do not come from the non-Western countries. The challenge do not come from the non-democratic countries. It's come from the Western country internally. So-called populism and anti-establishmentism. And these two types of ideology is gaining momentum. They challenge the liberalism in the heart. So nowadays, from my understanding, Chinese ideology cannot challenge liberalism. And if you want to challenge liberalism, you have to be strong enough. And in China, and we have three kinds of ideologies competing against each other. There's no dominating one. And politically, the ideology is Marxism. And in terms of the economy or economic development, it's economic practice. And then, in terms of our social life or in the culture, it's Confucianism. So these three, and each of the three dominating one sector. And so they are not inconsistent with each other. And if you read the very recent 19th Party Congress report, and our government tried to combine the Chinese traditional value and Marxism. But this just started. They try to. No one can guarantee that they can successfully combine these two things together. And so from my understanding, before this is a dominating ideology and shared by both government and society, and I doubt there's any China can challenging the liberalism, I mean, in terms of ideology. And what China will challenge in terms of ideology, I think this is China's model. That means it's not the thought, it's the economic policy. A lot of countries may follow. They say, hey, how? They say that China has achieved that kind of economic achievements based on this policy. Maybe we can achieve the same thing if we follow their suit. So I think China may have this kind of a policy influence instead of ideological influence.
Thank you very much. I think I'm told by the organizers that I have to close the session. Thank you very much once again, Professor Yan, for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.